Hi guys, Julia here, and I thought that today we should talk about some issues that CELTA trainees experience in their teaching practice. So some of the most common mistakes, I don't like the word mistakes, but some of the criteria that they are assessed against, and something that you should be paying attention to if you are on the course. Also, would be useful to know what those are if you're considering to take the course in the future. But also, if you don't think you will ever take CELTA, but you are an English teacher, I think it's still useful for you because those things are good for teaching in general. Like the issues that I'm going to discuss today, they're still relevant for teaching even if you're not going to do a CELTA course. Or if you've done your CELTA course but years ago, this could still be a nice refresher for you. So yeah, hope you'll find it useful. Let's go. Right, so before we talk about the common mistakes to avoid that I thought I could share with you, just wanted to preface by saying that I do have a different video on CELTA teaching practice where I break down what it is and how it goes and what the criteria are and all that. So if you're more interested in that would probably make a bit more sense to watch that one before you watch this one. But also, if you're familiar with what a CELTA TP is, then yeah, please stay because we're about to start something interesting. So the first mistake is not grading your language. What it is, essentially, it's when you use language, so words, grammar, or speed that are too advanced for your learners, so too difficult for them to understand. And like some of them are very straightforward, like words and grammar, duh. But some of them are a bit more subtle, and especially if you're a native speaker, because when I say speed, that includes your connected speech, for example. Basically, when you don't grade your language, you make your students' life a bit more difficult. So if you're looking for an example of what a non-graded instruction is, this would be it. So you have kick things off, you have jot down, and you also have whatever comes to mind, which is just a vague statement in itself, but also difficult to understand for lower level students. How you can address this issue, first of all, you're going to script your teacher talk. And when I say script, I mean literally write down what you will say. If you're on CELTA, you have to submit your lesson plans. And when we say script your teacher talk, it's literally writing down what you think you will say in class. What some trainees do is they are just being too descriptive. So they go, oh, I will tell the students to check in pairs. Oh, I will tell them to read the text. Da, da, da. That's not scripting. Scripting is using direct speech. In your lesson plan, you go, teacher says, read the text. Teacher says, check your answers. That's scripting. And as annoying and time consuming as it is, it's very useful. It's useful if you're new to teaching and if you've never really had this teaching experience. So you could think the things through, because it might be difficult to come up on the spot with an effective instruction and with a graded instruction. But then it might be also challenging for an experienced teacher, because in that case, it could be a fossilized thing. So something that you're so used to doing that you don't really notice that you're doing it. So in that case, you'd need to break that habit, and scripting could be your first step on the way to that. So yep, you use imperatives. So very simple grammar. Do this, do this, do this. Some trainees don't like imperatives because they say that they sound rude, but you can always add please or thank you or like a nice word at the end. But still, the main thing about an instruction is it has to be effective, and you can be as polite as you want, but if the message is not received, not a good instruction. So then obviously you're going to avoid idioms and phrasal verbs, and you're going to slow down, because sometimes, especially with connected speech, your learners might know all of the words, but then when it comes out and there's elision or there is intrusion or there is assimilation or whatever, they just don't recognize it. So they're like, oh, I've never heard anything like that. Whereas in fact, they have heard it, they know what it means. Yeah, just make sure that your pronunciation is graded as well and corresponds to the level that you're teaching. Now, if you remember the non-graded instruction, this thing, essentially it all comes down to this. We're ready to start. write your ideas in your notebooks. That's all that is, and that's what the instruction should be. Now, mistake number 2 is too much teacher talking time. And I have recently made a post on Instagram about TTT, when it's useful, when it's not useful, how you can balance that. So if you're interested, please do have a look there. It's quite useful. So what is teacher talking time and how much is too much? So first of all, it's when you speak, when your students could be interacting, thinking, or practicing whatever you taught them. Some examples of this include explanations instead of demos. So when you're setting up a task and you keep telling them what to do instead of showing them what they have to do. Over clarification, that's when you teach, let's say, grammar point, and you keep repeating your explanation and you keep telling them, I don't know, what the form is again and again and again, instead of letting them do it, seeing how they cope with it and then responding to that. Or just not liking when there is silence in the classroom and trying to fill it, and speaking when your students are processing. Now, how to address that? So first of all, you script your teacher talk, like I've said before. You think it through, and then you decide what you need to say, when you need to say it. And then it's also nice to be flexible, also if it's a lesson plan that you submit. So you could be, if this happens, I will say this. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going to mention it, for example. You're going to show instead of explaining. So you will demo an activity, literally do it with a student instead of telling them. And you're going to ask instead of telling them. So your ICQs and your CCQs. So you want to see what they know by asking questions, by eliciting. And then if they don't know, you're going to explain it. There is a video on ICQs that I made a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested in that, you can also watch that one. And mistake number 3 is not targeting your feedback. So what it is when you're not responding to students' needs in feedback. So instead of noticing what they need and kind of focusing on that in feedback, you just give feedback on everything. And what often happens is that teachers do notice where the students struggle, but they're still in feedback. There is no evidence of that. They're still not dealing with those things. They're dealing with everything. And an example of that would be eliciting every single answer instead of just focusing on the questions they struggled with. So when you literally go over all 6 questions and you're like, oh, what's number 1? Yes, it's this. What's number 2? Yes, it's this. Even when you know that they all have the right answer and there's literally no need for you to waste your time doing it. How to address that? So first of all, you plan how you will handle your feedback. Again, it might depend on what they give you as they do the task. So you'll be like, right, if I notice that they all have the right answer, I will do this. If I notice that they all struggled to find the right answer, I'll do this. Now, if they only struggled with certain questions, I'll do this. To know how to respond, you need to monitor and you need to actually pay attention to what they have. You need to pay attention to which questions everybody's able to answer and you don't need to focus on them. You need to notice which ones the majority of them struggle with. And you need to notice who's got the answer to the difficult questions where the rest of them struggled with them. Now, when I say the majority, it's about like 80%. So if it's only one student who doesn't know the answer, you're not really going to waste time talking about it. But if it's 10 out of 12 students struggling with it, you will pay attention to it and you will focus on it. Your feedback will be informed by your monitoring and you will only discuss something that they found difficult. Now, to show you what a targeted feedback is. Let's say you were teaching a reading class and you had a true-false task in there. There are 6 questions. So you give your instructions, they do it. You're monitoring. You're like, okay, these ones were easy, these ones were difficult. I'll need to focus on those ones in feedback. Great. Now they check in pairs. And again, you're like, oh, do I need to adjust anything that I planned for feedback? So you kind of need to see the final situation. Then you notice that some of them were easier and like everybody's got the right answer, but they struggled with some other ones. So when it's time to give them the answers, you only give them the answers that most of them got right. Can you check 1, 2, 4, and 6? Do you agree with those? And if you monitored well, they will agree with those. Great. Now, 3 wasn't very easy, but you know who's got the answer because, again, you were monitoring. So you're like, right, Mohammed, what's your number 3? And Mohammed says, oh, it's true, teacher. You're like, yeah, great. That is correct. And then you elicit why that was true. Like, right. Now, number 5 is difficult as well. But I know Maria's got the right answer. Maria, what do you have for 5? She goes, false. You're like, yeah, right. Good. Maria, why is it false? And she gives you the answers. And that's it. And that's your targeted feedback done. There are some variations to it. So if everybody's got the right answer and you know it, what you can do is you can just give them some verbal confirmation and be like, right, yeah, you guys, I noticed everybody's got all the right answers. Well done. Good job. Let's move on. You could also just show them the slide with the right answers and be like, yeah, you guys, I know you've got everything right, but just double check with the board. And that's it. What you cannot do is you cannot not deliver feedback. So even if they've got all the answers right, they still need to know that their answers are correct. It could be literally just like a sentence being like, yes, you guys did well, let's move on. Another scenario could be that the difficult ones, so my 3 and 5 in this case, maybe no one's got the right answer, and that's fine as well. In that case, you could either tell them what the answer is and then elicit why that's the answer, or you could ask them questions and kind of steer them in the right way and make them find the answer and tell you what it is. It doesn't really matter if it's a listening task, if it's a reading task, if it's a grammar controlled practice. Targeted feedback is always the same, so it should be based on your monitoring and what you see and their performance. And that's really all I have to say about this. So as always, thank you guys for watching. This is my Instagram where I post useful stuff. If you've got any questions, teaching, methodology, CELTA, whatever, you can always ask me and I'll answer. So you can DM me on Instagram. You can put your questions here in the comment section. I don't bite. Talk to me. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching again. Bye.